I laid my wife to rest 6 months ago. Since then, every single night, I've dialed her number just to hear that recording. Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet. But last Tuesday, someone answered. And the voice on the other end, it was hers. Tom, she breathed. You need to listen very carefully. I'm not dead. My name is Tom Riddichfield. And what happened after that shattered everything I believed about grief, about love, and about the finality of goodbye. I'm 38 years old. And up until 6 months ago, I lived what people like to call a perfect life. Not the staged, picture-perfect version you post online while your real world is falling apart. I mean the kind of perfect that's real, where you wake up beside the person who can make you laugh before you've even had coffee. The person who knows every ugly fear you carry and still chooses you. The person who can turn a boring errand into something you actually look forward to. That person was Vera. My wife of 15 years, Vera Riddichfield, had this way of making ordinary things feel special. She ran the children's section at our local library, and kids would practically tug their parents through the doors just to catch story time with her. She did voices, big ones. Jack's Giant sounded like a cranky Brooklyn cab driver. Sleeping Beauty's princess had a sweet southern drawl. Parents would linger nearby, pretending to search for books. But really they stayed because they didn't want to miss the performance. She was 36 when she died. 36 with laugh lines only just beginning to settle around her green eyes. With plans for a kitchen remodel. And a half-finished scarf she'd been knitting for my birthday. The police told me she died instantly when a truck smashed into her car. October 15th, 9:17 p.m. Rain pouring down. Maple and 3rd. The driver blasted through a red light at 60 and a 30 at the hospital. All I was allowed to identify was her wedding ring. They refused to let me see her. Trust me. Mr. Ridgefield, the officer said, his hand pressing down on my shoulder like a weight. Remember her the way she was. Her father, Morton, was the one who had to confirm the body at the morgue. When he came out, he looked like he'd aged 20 years in the span of 20 minutes. It's her, he managed. And then he dropped into a chair, like his bones had quit on him. The funeral was exactly the kind of thing Vera would have hated stiff. Formal, hushed, everyone dressed in black. Like grief had a uniform. Vera used to joke that. She wanted Hawaiian shirts at her funeral and nothing but disco music playing the whole time. But loss doesn't leave much room for jokes. Morton gave a eulogy that had grown men wiping at their eyes. My sister Polly squeezed my hand so hard it left bruises. My best friend Dennis practically had to hold me upright and guide me to the car when it was over. Here's what nobody warns you about grief. It convinces you that madness is normal. It makes you keep your dead wife's toothbrush in the cup like she'd be back for it. It makes you buy her favorite yogurt and only realize what you've done after you've already paid. It makes you keep paying the phone bill so her number stays active because the company didn't disconnect it. And you tell yourself maybe that mistake is the universe handing you a small mercy. So, every night at 9:17 p.m., the exact minute she died, I call her. 4 rings. And then her voice. Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet. Sometimes I actually do. Sometimes I leave messages like she's just out late and might listen later. I tell her about my day. I tell her Dennis is still trying to set me up with his cousin. I tell her Biscuit, our golden retriever, still parks himself by the door at 5:30, like he's waiting for her key in the lock. Polly thinks I need help. This isn't healthy. Tom, she told me last week when she found me asleep on the couch with my phone still in my hand. Vera's contact glowing on the screen. But what does healthy even mean when half of you is missing? When you wake up reaching across the bed for someone who isn't there. When you cook for 2 without thinking and end up eating alone, staring at an empty chair like it might suddenly fill itself. I'm an insurance adjuster. I investigate claims that don't add up. Fires, crashes, theft, anything that smells wrong. I'm good at it because I notice patterns. I spot inconsistencies. I see what doesn't belong, but I never noticed anything strange about that October night. Vera kissed me goodbye and said she'd be home by 10. Book club is reading something depressing again, she laughed. If I'm not back by midnight, assume I ran away to join the circus. Those were the last words she ever said to me, a joke about joining the circus. So when I tell you my dead wife answered her phone last Tuesday, you need to understand I'm not losing my mind. I know what death is. I've lived inside it for 183 days. I've learned its heaviness, its quiet, the way it seals a door and throws away the key. Death doesn't pick up a call. Death doesn't whisper your name. Death doesn't tell you to meet it at the place where you first said, I love you. But Vera did. I'm everything I thought I understood about losing her was about to break apart like glass. My living room had turned into a memorial without me ever meaning for it to happen. Her reading glasses still rested on the end table, folded neatly on top of a library book she'd never finished, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, bookmark stuck on page 247. Her mug, the one that said World's Okayest Wife, sat clean and ready by the coffee maker. I couldn't bring myself to put it away. Every morning I'd reach for it out of habit, remember, and then grab my plain blue one instead. Pictures were everywhere. Our courthouse wedding, because we spent the wedding fund on a down payment for the house. Vera in a $50 sundress. Me in my only suit. Both of us laughing because the judge's toupee slid out of place mid-ceremony. Yellowstone, where she tried to pet a bison and I nearly stopped breathing. Christmas morning last year, her in those ridiculous elf pajamas I bought as a joke. Biscuit tangled in wrapping paper at her feet. I met Vera 15 years ago at a book fair I wandered into by accident. I'd gotten turned around inside the community center and was searching for the exit when I heard her. She was surrounded by kids, reading Where the Wild Things Are like it was the most important thing in the world. When she roared during the wild rumpus part, 20 children roared right back. When story time ended, I pretended to browse cookbooks just to stay near her. Unless you're actually planning to cook that beef Wellington, she said. Coming up beside me, you might want to stop holding that book upside down. That was Vera. Sharp eyes, quick humor, and a smile that made you weirdly grateful for being called out. Went for coffee that day and talked for 4 hours straight. Told me she became a librarian because books practically raised her after her parents died when she was 7. Told her I became an insurance adjuster because I liked solving puzzles and helping people. Even if they weren't thrilled to see me. We built our life slowly, piece by piece. Nothing flashy, nothing headline-worthy. Saturday mornings meant pancakes drowned in too much syrup. She'd read while I cooked, tossing random facts over the top of the sizzling pan. Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts? She'd say, and I'd answer with something like, that's 2 more than my ex-girlfriend. She'd throw a cushion at me. We'd end up eating cold pancakes an hour later, laughing like kids. Vera also had this habit of hiding sticky notes everywhere. In my lunch bag. You're the jelly to my peanut butter. On the bathroom mirror. That face. I love that face. In my coat pocket. Drive safe, speed demon. I need you back in one piece. I still find them sometimes in books I haven't opened in years. In old jacket pockets from last winter. Each one lands like a paper cut on a wound that never fully closes. The crash happened on a Wednesday. She'd been at book club, the one that met once a month at Rosemary Chun's house. They were reading a book about grief, which still feels like a cruel joke. Vera called me at 8:30 and said they were finishing up. Rosemary's crying into her wine again, she whispered. I think this book broke her. Home by 10 o'clock. Tommy Bear. The police knocked at my door at 11:15. I knew before they opened their mouths. You don't send two officers for good news. They said things like, instantaneous and nothing she could have done. They said the other driver died too, but all I heard was the space where Vera's voice. Should have been no commentary filling the house. No off-key singing in the shower. No talking to Biscuit like he understood every word. Morton handled what I couldn't. Funeral plans. Memorial details. The cemetery plot. He looked older every time I saw him. Like grief was carving years into his face. She loved you more than words. Tom, he said at the funeral, gripping my shoulders hard. Don't you dare forget that. And don't you dare blame yourself. But I blame myself anyway, for not insisting on picking her up. For not checking the tire pressure that week like I usually did. For not saying, I love you, when she left. Just see you later, because after 15 years, I assumed we had 15,000 more. Polly moved in for 2 weeks after the funeral. She made me eat. Forced me to shower. Sat with me through nights that felt endless. You have to let her go, she'd say softly. Catching me staring at Vera's contact on my phone again. But how do you release someone who's stitched into every part of you? Her shampoo was still in our shower. Her voice was still on the answering machine. Her handwriting was still on the grocery list stuck to the fridge. Milk, bread, those cookies Tom pretends he doesn't eat. Dog food, love. That last one was so her turning something ordinary into a tiny love letter. This was my life now. Surrounded by proof of a love that had nowhere left to go. Tuesday night began like all the other Tuesday nights since she died. I'd just come home from investigating a warehouse fire in the industrial district. The owner swore it was an electrical issue, but the burn pattern screamed arson. I'd spent 8 hours picking through debris, taking photos, interviewing witnesses who all sounded like they'd practiced the same script. My clothes smelled like smoke and dishonesty. I poured myself a glass of Vera's favorite wine, a fine Malbec we found on our anniversary trip to a vineyard 2 years earlier. We bought a case and promised to save it for special moments. After she died, every night counted as special because I'd made it through another day without her. The bottle was nearly empty, and I'd need to open another soon. We used to laugh about getting old together. Sitting on the porch with wine. When we're 80, she'd say. We'll be those tipsy old people who embarrass everyone at family dinners. At exactly 9:17 p.m., I dialed her number. The ritual felt as necessary as air. 4 rings. Then the recording usually. Sometimes I'd talk to the voicemail and tell her about my day. Sometimes I'd just listen and hang up, letting her voice be the last thing I heard before I tried to sleep. But this time, on the second ring, someone picked up. Hello. Tom. My glass slipped from my fingers and exploded on the hardwood. Red wine spread across the floor, pooling and creeping into the seams. My legs went weak. The voice in my ear didn't just sound like Vera. It was Vera. The exact cadence, the exact pitch, especially the way she said my name. The slight catch on the T she always had when she needed me to take her seriously. I dropped the phone too. My hand shook so badly I couldn't keep hold of anything. When I grabbed it again, wine soaking my socks, glass crunching under my feet, I could barely press it to my ear. Vera, I croaked, like the word had snapped in half on the way out. Tom. Honey, please don't hang up, she said quickly. I know this can't make sense, but it's me. I'm alive. My mind split down the middle. One part screamed that it was impossible, that Morton had identified her, that I'd stood at her funeral, that we buried her in Riverside Cemetery beside her mother. The other part recognized that voice the way you recognize your own heartbeat. 15 years of it every morning, every night, through laughter, arguments, and whispered moments in the dark. This isn't real, I said. Someone is doing something sick. Who are you? Remember Pretzel? She fired back. Our first dog, the one we found behind the Chinese restaurant on 5th Street. You wanted to name him Dumpling, she said. But I won because he slept twisted up like a pretzel. My throat tightened. No one knew that. We never talked about Pretzel because we had to give him up when we moved into that first apartment with the no pets rule. Then she kept going. Remember our first fight? You forgot my birthday because you were so nervous about meeting my dad, you mixed up the date. You showed up with gas station flowers and a Snickers bar, and I laughed so hard I forgave you right away. That was another private story. One we kept to ourselves because it was too ridiculous to tell anyone. At our wedding, she continued, when the judge asked if you took me as your wife, you said absolutely instead of I do, and everyone laughed. I could barely breathe, but I loved it, she said, because it was so you full of certainty, a little unconventional, completely all in. How was all I could manage. My legs finally gave out and I slid down the wall, sitting in the spreading wine like it was some kind of offering. I can't explain everything on the phone, she said. They might be listening. Meet me tomorrow at noon. You know where, Tommy Bear, our place. And then the call ended. No goodbye. No explanation. Just dead silence. I called back instantly, my fingers clumsy on the screen. Straight to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet. I called again. And again. 6 more times. 7. 8. The same recording every time. Like the last 5 minutes never happened. I called Polly. Barely able to string words together. Someone's messing with me, I said. Someone who sounds exactly like Vera. They knew things. Private things? Polly drove over right away. She found me still sitting in the wine. I had glass shards in my palms from trying to clean up without thinking. Tom, she said, voice tight, you saw her. We all did. Morton identified her at the morgue. This is grief messing with you. Maybe someone hacked her phone and pulled old texts or emails. But even while she bandaged my hands, my thoughts kept circling one thing, our place. The abandoned Ferris wheel at Old Wonderland, parked at our 3rd date. The spot where I first told her I loved her and she said it back. No one else knew about it. We never took photos there. We never mentioned it to anyone. It was our secret. Sacred. That voice had been flawless, not an impression, not a copy. But Vera down to the smallest breath before saying something important. Either someone was pulling the cruelest stunt imaginable, or the impossible was somehow true. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I shut my eyes, I heard her saying, I'm alive. I sat at the kitchen table under harsh fluorescent light with the accident report spread out like a crime scene. Truck driver, Brian Witt. Blood alcohol level triple the legal limit. Dead on impact. Vera's Honda Civic, crushed beyond recognition. Medical examiner. Injuries consistent with a high-speed collision. Time of death, 9/17. P.M. But something started to bother me. One detail I'd been too wrecked to notice. Before, Vera's wedding ring was listed as not. Recovered. Police had told me it must have slipped off during the crash and disappeared into the wreckage. But that ring hadn't left her finger in 5 years. Not since her hand swelled up from a shellfish allergy. We used to joke that someday they'd have to cut it off. And she'd always say, they'll bury me with it. At 3 a.m., I dragged out our photo albums and studied recent pictures of her like I was working a case. In every photo from the last year. That white gold band with a tiny sapphire was there. She never removed it. Not for showers. Not for sleep. Never. At 7 a.m. I called in sick to work the first time in 5 years. My boss, Harold, sounded genuinely worried. Tom, you've been through hell. Take whatever time you need. Then I did something I hadn't done since college. I loaded my gun after Vera's death. I'd bought a Glock 19 because I'd become paranoid in a way. I never used to be. Death had shown up once. What was stopping it from showing up again? I'd been to the range a couple times, enough to handle it decently. Now I loaded it, tucked it into my jacket pocket, and headed for Wonderland Park. Dennis called while I was driving. "Hey, man. You okay?" Harold called me. "Said you sounded off." "Food poisoning," I lied, shocked by how easily the lie came out. "Bad takeout. You need me to bring anything? Ginger ale? Crackers?" "No, I'm fine," I said. Then, "Hey, random question. That week before Vera's accident, you worked on her car, right?" There was a pause. "Yeah," Dennis said slowly. "Oil change, new brake pads." "Why are you asking that now?" "I'm just trying to understand everything," I said. "Trying to make it make sense." "Tom," Dennis said, voice firm, "a truck ran a red light. Nothing on her car would have mattered. The brakes were perfect. The engine was smooth. That drunk bastard killed her. Not a mechanical problem." I thanked him and ended the call, but one phrase kept echoing in my head. The brakes were perfect. So why did the report mention brake failure as a contributing factor? Brake malfunction prior to impact. Wonderland Park sat outside town. 30 minutes of back roads in memory. Vera, and I found it by accident on our third date. Searching for a scenic place to watch sunset. The park had been shut down since 2008, another casualty of recession and time, but the Ferris wheel still stood, rusted and towering against the sky. We'd climbed up to the operator's platform and watched the sun drop behind the mountains. "I love you," I blurted out. Too soon, too fast. We'd known each other only 3 weeks. "Thank God," she said. "I've been holding that in since day 2. Now I parked at the broken entrance at 11:45. Leaves spun around crumbling ticket booths. Old concession stands sat empty. Menu boards faded like ghosts. The place looked like a graveyard for childhood joy. Weeds split the pavement. Carousel horses, once bright, were chipped and eerie in the gray morning light. I checked the gun in my pocket. The safety was off. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The investigator part of me had taken control, the part that hunts lies and pulls truth into daylight. If this was a setup, I'd find it. If someone thought they could use Vera's memory to control me, they picked the wrong person. I walked toward the Ferris wheel. Broken glass from old bulbs crunched under my shoes. The metal structure groaned in the wind like it was morning. Right at noon, I noticed movement near the ticket booth. A person stepped out, medium height, wearing a dark hoodie. Even though the day wasn't cold, they moved carefully, favoring the left leg. And that walk had hit me like a punch. Vera had broken her left ankle ice skating 10 years ago. On chilly days, she had a barely noticeable limp. My heart slammed against my ribs as the figure stopped about 20 feet away. "Tom," the voice said, "don't come closer yet. You need to understand something first." It was her voice again, but now there was something else woven into it. Fear. In 15 years, Vera had only sounded truly afraid twice. Once when Morton had a heart attack 5 years ago, and once when she got trapped in a broken elevator between floors. This was that same tremor, that same controlled panic. "The crash wasn't an accident," she said. "I found something at the library down in the old archives. The basement section that's supposed to be for historical documents only. I found recent files, Tom. Documents about the Northfield Foundation using the closed wing for something illegal. Money laundering. Maybe worse. I copied them. I hid them. And someone found out." "This is insane," I said, my fingers tightening around the grip in my pocket. "If you're really Vera, if any of this is real, show me your face." The figure lifted a hand slowly, and I held my breath. She pulled the hood back, and the world tilted. My knees nearly folded. But I forced myself upright. It was Vera, and also not the Vera I remembered. A tough, thick scar ran from her left temple down toward her jaw, pink and raised like it hadn't fully settled yet. Her auburn hair was gone, dyed black, cut short, uneven, but her eyes, those green eyes that went gold in sunlight, were the same. The tiny butterfly-shaped birthmark above her left eyebrow was the same. The slight crinkle of her nose when she was about to cry was the same. It was her. Vera, I said, the name breaking apart in my mouth, half prayer, half accusation. The truck driver wasn't drunk, she said. He was paid to kill me. But I lived, barely. She stepped closer and I saw her hands shaking. A woman named Nadira found me, Vera said. She saw it happen. She was driving behind the truck. She saw him speed up on purpose. She saw him brace for impact. She's a former trauma nurse. She fled Afghanistan. She lives off the grid. She pulled me out before anyone else arrived, and she drove away with me before the police showed up. The body, I whispered. Morton identified your body. Vera's face twisted with pain. Northfield has people everywhere, she said. Police, coroner, even the hospital. They staged it. There was another woman that night, a homeless woman around my age and size. They burned parts of her body to make identification impossible. In his grief, Morton just accepted what they put in front of him. And the ring? I asked, voice shaking. They said it was lost because it wouldn't fit the other woman, Vera said. They needed it gone. My thoughts raced, trying to latch onto something solid. But why didn't you come to me? I demanded. 6 months, Vera. I've been dying every day for 6 months. Tears slid down her scar. They threatened you, she whispered. One of them leaned into my crushed car and told me if I survived, they'd kill you next and make it look like you did it to yourself. Grieving husband couldn't handle it. Nadira convinced me staying dead was the only way to keep you alive. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. This is everything, she said. The documents. The proof. Photos Nadira took of the truck driver meeting with Northfield executives before the crash. Recordings from the closed wing where they talked about eliminating me. I was the threat. Why now? I asked, why contact me now? Because they're getting worse, she said. 3 more people from the library have had accidents in the last month. They lived, but barely. And I couldn't take it anymore, Tom, knowing you were calling my phone every night. Nadira set up a forwarding system, Vera said, voice cracking. I heard the messages. Every one. You talking about Biscuit. About Polly. About how you still make coffee for 2. I broke, she whispered. I answered because I'd rather risk everything than let you suffer one more day thinking I'm gone. Then we both heard it. Engines. 3 black SUVs tearing down the access road. Dust rising behind them. They were far, but closing fast. They tracked your phone, Vera gasped, grabbing my hand. Tom, we have to run, now. We sprinted toward the woods behind the park. Her hand in mine was solid, warm, real. The familiar calluses were. Their years of shelving books. Flipping pages, living. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't grief inventing something to survive. We crashed through brush and branches, clothes snagging, skin stinging. My car's on the other side of these woods, I panted. They'll block the roads, Vera said. We have to move. And as we ran, she dropped the next truth like a bomb. There's one more thing, she said. Morton isn't my real father. My stride faltered. He's one of them, she said, voice tight with horror. He always has been. My real parents found something about Northfield when I was 7. Their car crash wasn't an accident either. Morton was assigned to raise me, to watch me. It hit me so hard it felt physical. Morton, the man who walked her down the aisle, the man who taught me to fish, the man who sat at every holiday dinner, the man who identified the body. We burst out of the trees onto a service road where I'd parked my backup car, an old habit from my investigative life. Always have an exit plan. I yanked the door open and we dove inside. The engine roared as I slammed the gas, and I floored it just as the first SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. "Where's Nadira?" I shouted, taking a turn so sharp the car nearly tipped. "Safe house," Vera said. 40 miles north. She has new identities for us, passports, documents, everything. I drove like I'd never driven before, using instincts built from years of studying crash scenes. Reading roads, knowing where pursuers lose sight, where exits hide, where backpaths cut into highways. Vera guided me through turns she'd apparently memorized, voice steady even with danger breathing down our necks. When we hit the highway, she reached over and touched my face with trembling fingers. "I'm so sorry, Tommy Bear," she whispered. "For the pain. For the lies. For letting you mourn me." "You're alive," I said thickly. "You're here. That's all that matters." But even as I said it, I knew it was true. Our old life was gone. No more easy Saturdays and sticky notes and quiet evenings at home. But Tom and Vera were dead now, as surely as if the truck had taken both of us. "There's a turnoff in 2 miles, Vera said, checking the mirror. "Nadira will be waiting." I took Vera's hand and squeezed hard. "Together," I said. "Together," she repeated. The SUVs were closing in, but they didn't understand what we did. We had nothing left to lose, and everything worth fighting for, and we still had each other. The exit appeared. Tires screamed as I took it too fast. Whatever came next, we would face it side by side. The dead had come back, and now we were about to vanish.